Hi, Tim Unkert here, and in this video, we're going to look at a Leetcode problem that I found online that was pretty cool. I'll leave a link in the description to this problem. Anyways, the problem gives you a Roman number, and you want to convert it to an integer. And there's some information that the Roman numerals are represented by I, V, X, L, C, D, and M. They give the values for each, and it also goes down, I'll just quickly summarize. If you place an I before V or X, that takes 1 off the V or X and makes it 4 or 9. If you place an X before L and C, it takes 10 off. That makes it either 40 and 90. And then if you place a C before D and M, it makes it 400 and 900. And they give some examples, like if you have this, you should have an output of 3. If you have this, you should have an output of 4. Whoops. If you have this would be L is 50, V is 5, and then we have 3 added to that, so it should be 58. And if you have this, you should get 1994, and here's their explanation with it, because you have M is 1,000, CM, because the C is before the M takes 100 off, it's 900. XC, because the C is before, or the X is before the 100, it takes off 10, so it's 90, and then IV, because the I is before the V, it takes off 1, it's 5, so it's 1,000 plus 900 plus 90 plus 4 gives you 1994. Okay, and the length is less than 15. These are the constraints, and S has to be a valid Roman numeral. Okay, those are the constraints of the problem. We're going to go through my solution in Python. Take it for what it's worth. I'm not a premium member of Leetcode, although it seems pretty reasonable. I was checking out the prices today. Maybe I'll join it. I don't know. So I haven't gone through what their solution is, so take my solution with a grain of salt. And it probably could be refactored and made a little bit better, but I'm going to do it in Python. And so I'm going to pull up VS Code here, and I'm just going to make some notes that I look while looking at my notes. So I is 1, okay, and if it's before V or X, it's going to be -1. Is going to be -1. Okay, V is 5. X is 10, and if it's before, let's see, I think it was, what was it in the problem? Let's check up here. Hold on one sec. So if X is before L or C, it's is going to be -10. Okay, and then the next one, let's just keep going with this. We've got L, that's 50. And then C, which is 100, unless it's before, let's see, D or M, is going to be -100. Okay, and then we've got D is 500, and M is 1,000. Okay, all right, cool. All right, so now we're going to start with the examples that they've given us, and then let me just look at my notes. So I'm going to start with this example, and I'm going to comment out the other examples. So we have V, so this output should be 3. Okay, this output should be 4. Then we got IX, that should output 9. And so I'll just uncomment these when the time comes, and we'll test them all out. This one should output 58, and then there's one more, which is MCMXCIV. That one should output 1994. Okay. All right, so what we are going to want to do is write a function. And I'm going to write a function. I'm going to call it, I'm going to define the function, and then I'm going to call it Roman to integer, and we're going to take in the value of s, and then we'll start. Okay, and I'm going to change s to a list. I'm going to call that list s_list, and I'm going to do that, use square brackets here, and I say character for character in s. So that's going to split it apart into a list from a string. Okay, and I've got to put an equal sign here. Okay. All right, so also I'm going to have a variable I is equal to 0 and sum is equal to 0. Okay, and after that, I'm going to start a while loop. So I'm going to say lowercase while the length of s list is greater than 1 and I is less than the length of, let me pull this up here so you guys can see. And while I is less than the length of s list minus 1. Okay, and I'll explain that in a moment. All right, so the reason why I did -1 is because I want to look at the current iteration of s list as I'm going through. So the value of I want to look at s list with an index of I. So, and then I want to look at the number after it to see if I either add or take off. Okay, so the reason why I do I is less than the length of the s list -1 is because otherwise I get out of index range. Okay, if I did that otherwise. So that's why I'm doing that. So I'm going to start with an if statement. So if the s list at I equals this first string I, and now this is going to be a little bit long because I'm using big font here for the video, so it might wrap around. And s list of the I plus 1 equals v, or s list at I equals I, and I'll have it wrap, so just do Alt-Z to wrap it, and s list at I, and I'll talk about this in a moment, if that equals, oh no, I plus 1, if that equals x, then I'm going to take this sum and I'm going to subtract 1 from it. Okay? All right, so what that's basically saying is if the I is either before v or x, I'm going to subtract 1 from the sum, which it kind of makes sense if we look up at IV is 4, because we're going to add 5 when we get a v, but then we have to subtract the 1 off to get 4. Okay, and same thing, IX is 9. So that's what that statement says. Next, I'm going to have an elif, okay, because I want this one to be triggered after the if statement. So I'm going to say elif s list. So if it just equals this, now if I put this first, it would mess it up because it would plus 1 and then maybe -1 if I had another if statement, or it would just skip the elif. So it's skipping this first if it's just this and doesn't have v or x after it. So in that case, I just want to add 1. So sum is going to be plus or equal to 1. Okay. Now I'm going to do the same thing with both x and c, because those are ones that you can place before the other Roman numerals, and it will take off the value. So we're going to repeat this statement. So quick way to do that, I'm just going to copy this, go here, paste it. Now we're going to change this to x and this to, so you can put x before L or C. Okay, and it's going to be, sorry. this has got to be X here. This has got to be C here. We're going to subtract 10 from that, okay? And then we're going to add 10 if it's just by itself. Okay, I'm going to copy this one more time because we can also place C before stuff. Okay, so I'm going to say if this equals C, and we place it before D or M, we're going to subtract 100. And if it's just by itself as C, we're going to add 100. Okay, so that takes care of those 3 Roman numerals that can either be the value themselves or subtract the value if they're placed right before certain other values. Okay, and the way I'm getting this is from this up here. So we have I, X, and C. All right, so it kind of helps me when I'm trying to solve these problems to write out what's going on with the problem before you actually start coding. Okay. All right, so now we've got to take care of V, L, D, and M by themselves because those you can't place beforehand according to the constraints of this problem. You can't place them beforehand and take off those values. So we'll start with V, and we'll go up in order. So if the S list at I equals V, then we're going to add 5. Okay. All right. So let's copy this. So the next one that doesn't matter if it's before is L, and that would be adding 50. Okay. And then we'll just copy it again. And then after that, we're going to have D, and we add 500. And then the next one is going to be M, which we add 1,000. Okay, so far, so good, right? Now at the end of this while loop, we want to put I plus equals 1 because we want to increment I so we don't get in an infinite loop. That would be bad because remember this while loop is running while the length of the list is greater than 1 and I is less than the length of the list minus 1. So if we're not increasing I, it will always be that way and it'll just keep running. Okay. So after this, we're going to break out of that while loop after we run through that. But here's the issue. So one, if it's just one number long, this while loop's not going to be triggered. And 2, if I gets up to this value of the length minus 1, which is would be the last character, it's going to not add or subtract anything. Okay, and we need to have, for the last character, we need to have it adding for each one of those because that's the only thing that will work. Now, if it's 1, if the length of the list is only 1, then I is going to be less than 0. But if I is 0 here, and the length of the list is 1, then it's going to skip the while loop and go to the position at I. So we're going to have the position at I is going to be once either the last number in the list, or if there's only one number, it still is the last number in the list technically and the first number. But so we have to have a bunch of if statements here. So if the list at the I position, now I is going to be at the right, 1 less than the length of the list. So if the length of the list is 1, I would be 0 at this point because it would skip the while loop. If the length of the list is something longer, like 10, then I is going to be 9 at this point, and 9 is going to be the last index in the list because the list will start at 0. Okay, this goes 0 to 9 because we start with 0 when we're programming. So for the last ones, we have to add each one of these. So if this last part of the list is just this, we're going to have to add 1. If the last part of the list is just a V, we're going to have to add 5. Okay, if the last part of the list is an X, we're going to have to add 10. If the last part of the list is, let's see what comes next. I'm not an expert on Roman numerals here, but if it's L, then we're going to add 50. If the last part of the list is equal to C, we're going to add 100. If the last part of the list is equal to D, we're going to have double equals here. If that equals D, we're going to add, I think D is 500. Yeah? And if the last part of the list is equal to M, we are going to add 1,000. Okay, at the end, we're going to return the sum. Okay. All right. So I'm going to set a variable, the solution, which is going to be equal to this function when I pass in S. Okay. And then I'm going to, because I'm using Python 3, I'm going to print an F string and say the solution is solution. Now they just wanted a number outputted, but I think this looks a little nicer. You know, you give the actual, give a little user friendly, have some proper grammar there. And anyway, so now we're going to run this. Now remember, right now I have S equaling 3, so it should be 3. Okay, so we're going to run it, and we get the solution is 3. Okay, cool. That works. Let's check out some of the other ones. So now I'm going to comment this one out and uncomment this one and run. Solution is 4. That one works. Okay, let's uncomment this one. We should be getting 9. Solution is 9. That one works. Comment that back. Next one, this one, we should get 58. So I'll run this one. Solution is 58. Excellent. And then the last one, we should get 1994. And we'll run that one. The solution is 1994. Okay, so you can see this works. Now, there's a lot of if and elif statements. If you think you can refactor this and make it a little bit nicer, or you think there's something incorrect with my solution, please let me know in the comments. It seems to work for everything. So thanks for watching. If you liked videos like these, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing and hitting the bell for notifications, as it really helps the channel grow and helps me to keep creating content like this. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.